All in Sports Network. We love sports.
This is All in Horns. This is Thursday's episode 13. It is Thursday. It is September 12th, and I'm Tanner Carlson along with Jake Jimerson. Obviously, you can tell this is a very special episode. We're extremely excited. We get to do our first in-person episode. Now, Jake, you and I, we grew up together. We've known each other since we were little kids. In 7th grade is when we met. And so we've been doing things like this for a very long time together. It's only been recently that we've been separated, and it's been very hard. I'm glad to have you back.
It's been a long distance relationship as of lately.
It has been a long distance relationship, but yeah, we're back together. We got the boys back together, and we're actually rerunning the Texas-Michigan game on right now as we're in here. And so thanks for being here, man. I'm super excited to do this show. We've got Thursday, Friday, and Saturday show in person. So it should be really good. We've got a great rundown for you. We're going to get into the UTSA game a little bit more than we have in our previous episodes. We're going to go and give you a couple of interesting stats. And then really today's episode, as weak as week 3 might be, it always is kind of a dead week. Just every year, there's never really a lot.
There's always surprises, though.
But there's always surprises. Just like Illinois taking on Notre Dame, you can never take a team too lightly. Any team can win on any given Saturday. That is the joy and the absolute reason why we love college football as much as we do. And so we're just going to do a week 3 preview of some games, some interesting betting lines, I think, to say the least.
I have an upset pick.
Yeah.
Just to tease it right now, I have an upset pick.
And you know what? Why don't we do that every week? Why don't we do once a week? We choose our best upsets. We don't have anything necessarily prepared for you for this episode, but
I do.
But well, Jake does. So let's go ahead and just dive into it. Starting off, you have an interesting stat about Quinn Ewers that I want to talk about.
Yeah, we kind of talked about on I think it was Tuesday's episode about Quinn Ewers' performances since the Oklahoma State game, and that kind of Sark mentioning that being a turning point for him. And since that game, Quinn Ewers is 8-0. On his for true road games. He's 164 244 yard attempts, which is good for 67%, 2,001 yards. And here's the most impressive part: 15 touchdowns, another running touchdown, and only 1 interception.
Quinn has been able to take care of the ball. I remember whenever he first put on a Texas uniform and we were watching him, and I think it was the first throw of the game was nearly intercepted. And then like the second or third throw of the game was intercepted. And he seemed a little sporadic that freshman year or that first year starting, whatever you want to call it. It was his years have been a little complicated, but I guess it was a freshman red shirt.
It was a freshman year with skipping his high school year, that it was never realistic for him to get on the field at Ohio State with missing a senior year of high school. And I think that's what really kind of caused him to have more to develop than he probably would have if he stayed another year in high school, and his footwork being such an issue, and he was early on, even at Texas. I think that's a big reason why, we've seen him develop so much year over year. A lot of people forget just how young he is. He's not Bo Nix. He's not in his 10th year at college. He's not Dylan Gabriel. Yeah. He's had to kind of develop each year, and we've seen that development.
And I think now he's on that developmental track of what you should be accustomed to seeing out of a college starting quarterback from freshman year to junior year. But it did seem like it took a little bit more for Quinn because he did skip that senior year in high school. But I think taking care of the ball is something that he has really prided himself on of recently, especially since that Oklahoma State game. Obviously, only 1 interception. That came against Colorado State of all things. And so,
it's road games.
Yeah. So, but still, especially in what can be a rowdy environment, Texas has always struggled at Ames against Iowa State. It's huge that you can take care of the football in a place like that. Lubbock, huge if you can take care of the football.
Kansas State, I was actually at that game. Yeah. The game at Kansas State, not last year, but the year before. And Quinn was really good in that game, and what was not really great weather. It was windy, and I can tell you that stadium was loud. That was K-State fans were pumped up for that game, and that was one of his coming out performances as far as a really tough road test. And then obviously last year at Ames, Ames is just that's a place that's tough to play regardless of how Iowa State is playing in a year. And I think he's just proven it at this point on the road, especially with this trip to Michigan last week.
Well, Texas doesn't have to worry about any road games. The next 3 games at home for Texas, and that'll be UTSA, UL Monroe to wrap up non-conference play. Texas jumps into conference play against Mississippi State in Austin. So the next 3 at home, not a lot of travel. Is this a good time to maybe, I hate saying rest players, but if anybody is banged up, hint, hint, Jaden Blue, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, should he get a little bit more rest in these upcoming weeks heading into conference play?
Yeah, I mean, these next 2 weeks are, we don't know how he is.
Right.
We're not in the training room. We don't know if he's 100%. He's 100%. If he's 80, if he's even 80%, though, I bet Sarkisian kind of limits his use. In 2 games that quite frankly, the Longhorns should win both these games if all their backups had to play. This is not the UTSA of 2 years ago. Louisiana Monroe, they're just not.
They're Louisiana Monroe.
These are just 2 games Texas should roll in regardless of who's playing. And hopefully we get to see a lot of Jarrett Gibson in these games.
Right.
I'm really hoping to see him kind of be the bell cow back, because I think Wisner's another guy you kind of want to keep healthy.
That running back room you need to keep healthy, period.
Because even Gibson, he needs the reps because he's a freshman, but you also can't overuse him because he is a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
And if he goes down, he was pivotal in that Michigan game.
And I do want to talk about something about that Michigan game with Jaden Blue and the running back room. What an effort. I don't think that's getting talked about enough within the Texas circle of Jaden's Blue being able to come back into that game when he didn't really need to or have to, and he still put up a valiant effort, still scored a touchdown.
Had the one move that completely made the Michigan defender look foolish. He did trip up a couple times because of the injury, but that one move where everyone knows what play we're talking about, where he was out in open space and just made a Michigan corner look absolutely silly with a little hesitation juke.
Right.
And as we all know, Blue is fast. And so when he's able to pull off moves like that in open field, I would not want to be a secondary person because he can also run over you.
Well, and that's the thing too, is I just think the effort and the drive and the heart and just the competitive nature that this team has, this culture that Sarkisian has been able to instill in all these players, it's vital for a player to go out there and say, look, I don't care if we're up by 3 touchdowns. I'm the starting running back. I want to be out there with my boys out there in battle. And that's exactly what he showed. I think that resonates a lot to not only coaching staff, but in the locker room as well. And I think players, a Trey Wisner, a Jarrett Gibson, can see that and say, you know what, if our starter is out there and a 3-point or 3-score lead and he's still trying to fight to get back out onto the field when he probably doesn't have to, yeah, I can do the same. I can put that same effort in.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to last year. The tone was set. JT Sanders played through a lot of pain last year in the OU game and many other games, and sometimes wasn't as effective, but it just sends a message to your teammates that they are willing to fight through whatever they're going through to be out on the field and play with them. And it kind of just goes to everything we've talked about. I know we've kind of gushed over Steve Sarkisian and the program that he's built, but I think all Texas fans know it's been a long time to build to being a program that's worth being this happy and this excited about.
I think that's well put. Like, I think it's pretty well deserved. I think any fan base, you insert fan base where we are currently sitting at, that's not Ohio State, that's not Georgia, that's not Alabama, that has not had the recent success for the extended period of time that those programs have. And Ohio State hasn't won a national title since the Ezekiel Elliott year, which was 2017,
around there,
2015.
Yeah.
Because I think he was drafted by the Cowboys in 2016. That was
I think it would have been 15.
He and Dak's rookie season was 2016. So the 2015 year, they won the national championship. And Ohio State is a top 3 ranked team almost every single year.
They've been in the playoffs almost every year, it feels like, or we're very close.
Right. And yes, that is an accomplishment in itself, but to climb that mountaintop and to be there, it's not something easily done. And so I think people take for granted what Nick Saban in Alabama was capable of doing year after year, what Dabo and Clemson was capable of doing for the stretch of time that they were at the top, and where Georgia currently is now. I think it's okay for fans to be gushy and like really dive into it because it doesn't happen. Texas fans were there. We lost it. Now we've got it back. It's like, okay, now we know what it's like to not have that anymore. Let's not go through that again.
Yeah. I mean, look at an OU right now. You know, they're with their recruiting, I think they're going to be okay in the long run, but their fans right now are melting down.
Yeah.
I mean, Saturday was an ugly game
And
against people think Houston wasn't good last year. Houston is horrible this year. And OU won that game by 2, and their fans have been spoiled. Even though they haven't won the national title since 2000, they've been a 10-win team every year, pretty much our whole lives.
Well, that and they've made multiple playoffs. You know, they've made national championship games,
tons of Big 12 championships,
right.
And now I don't think any OU fan realistically thinks they're competing for the SEC championship this year,
or really even a playoff spot, which is
no, definitely not.
Which
even
is
a
crazy.
spot.
With there being 12 teams that get a bid. OU fans and OU are probably thinking maybe not this year. That doesn't happen for OU, at least not in recent memory.
Yeah, I mean, if they were making the 14 playoff every year, the 12-team playoff, those couple years that they barely missed, they would have been in a playoff as a 5 or 6 seed.
Sure.
And even last year, I think they would have snuck in with the 2 losses.
Maybe.
They didn't have the toughest schedule, but
I would
just
have
like a Texas with the name brand only having 2 losses. I think you're going to get in most of the time. And so I'm not trying to down talk OU's football program. I just mean they've been so good for so long that this year, even though they're 2-0, they feel completely miserable right now as a fan base. Whereas it's kind of nice to be on this side of things right now with the Texas program being where it is and hopefully where it stays the rest of the year.
And I can attest to OU fans right now. Texas has been 2-0, and I felt helpless as a Longhorn fan. Like Texas has been to a point where it's like, man, we narrowly escaped a couple of teams, or, oh, great, we've got BYU coming up in week 3. This is a loss. Like, you just have that feeling, and Tulane might be that for OU this week. And, I mean, it's just something that I get where you're at. It's kind of nice for a Longhorn fan to say, meh.
and hopefully it takes most important, because we say this, but OU beat Texas last year.
Right.
And that game is, like every year, probably the biggest game of the year, maybe Georgia, but I will be devastated if Texas loses that game this year, because Texas is a much better football team last year. They're even a better football program compared to OU.
I will not be devastated if Texas loses to Georgia this year. If Texas loses to OU, put me on suicide watch.
This Saturday show will be
do a wellness check if that happens.
Yeah,
like
or
seriously.
Don't ask, don't call.
just leave me alone. Seriously, because like again,
we might not do a show that day.
Right? Yeah, it would take a lot. It would take a lot. And if we did do a show, it'd probably sound like this. For 30 straight minutes. Like it just wouldn't, we would have nothing to say. So you and I, we've talked about it before. And with this schedule that Texas has this year, Michigan, OU, Georgia, A&M, of those games, which is the most important game? And you and I, without a blink, without a hesitation, both said it's OU. It will always be OU.
It is OU, then it is Georgia, then it's probably A&M. And with the Michigan game being behind us, originally I would have put the Michigan game above A&M. I know A&M fans are going to not be happy with that, but
we don't care what they really have to say.
Yeah, I know that game's their Super Bowl. You look at the ticket prices, you can see that, but it's nice to have that rivalry back, and I am excited to have that game back. But at the same time, that is not Texas's primary rival. OU is the number 1 rival of Texas. Always has been, always will be. That'll never change regardless of what happens in the SEC. And then just having Georgia on the schedule, coming to Austin, could be a number 1 against number 2 matchup.
Very well.
I hope it is.
Very well. Both teams have
be undefeated to that point.
Yeah.
That has a chance to be the biggest game in the history of DKR.
Yeah, because Texas doesn't play OU at DKR. There's been no championship game, if you will, at DKR. There's no home field advantage.
And maybe there's a game way before we were born. But
maybe, and I don't even know if you can put at what point was there ever a top 3, top 2, top 5 matchup between Texas and Texas A&M?
Well, I mean, A&M hasn't been, other than the COVID year, they haven't been top 5 since the 30s.
That's what I'm saying. So that's kind of my whole point there. Is like, at what point would there have been a game at Texas? Texas Tech, maybe. I don't at some point. I know the biggest game was in Lubbock.
Yeah, because that Tech game would have been probably one of the biggest games at DKR, but it was obviously in Lubbock,
right?
And that was for Tech. They're kind of one of those programs that they're going to be really good, and then they're going to have a couple of years where they're rebuilding, and then they're going to be really.
They've been in a rebuild stage for a while.
Well, yeah, everything runs through Lubbock. I mean, everyone runs through
Lubbock, and they don't look back.
Through Texas Tech.
They don't look back ever.
Abilene Christian was running through.
Yeah. Ask Baker Mayfield. So yeah, I just think that's something that you could be right. I mean, in recent memory, I can't remember a game. If it is Texas 2, Georgia 1 at that point in the season, there being a bigger game. And what a way to enter the SEC with starting off with a historic opportunity there in Austin.
Yeah, and I know we're looking ahead here, but we're fans. We're not the team.
No, yeah.
The players aren't listening to us. They're not going to look ahead, so we can look ahead.
And if they are listening to us and then they're digesting what we're saying, we've got bigger problems.
Yeah, we are not.
They can listen. You guys can listen, subscribe, all the things. You can also, call in and be like, you guys are idiots, and we'll be like, yeah, you're right. We are. We're just fans, that are just talking out of our ass. So let's talk a little bit about the week 3 matchups that we've got going on this week. I know there's a couple of them that stand out. Let's start with Texas UTSA, and then we'll work our way up to some of the other games that stand out. Again, not a great list. I think the only ranked matchup right now is Missouri and BC.
Arizona K-State as well.
Arizona K-State is another ranked matchup. On Saturday, the only game is BC and Missouri. That Arizona State K-State game, which is not a Big 12 game, by the way, is a Friday night. But let's go ahead. We will get into that very shortly. We're not going to spend a ton of time. Tomorrow's episode is going to be the Texas UTSA, really kind of getting into the meat and potatoes of that. Texas UTSA, what are you looking for?
Domination from the first quarter until the fourth. 60 minutes of hell.
Yeah.
You know exactly what Sarkisian said. That's what I'm looking for. Like I said, UTSA and ULM, but for the sake of this week, just UTSA. Texas should be able to start their twos and blow them out in this game on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
Because Texas is at a point where their depth is to that level. And this is, I was actually a little scared about that UTSA game a couple of years ago because that UTSA team is really good. If that UTSA team was rolling in this week, I'd be like, Texas needs to come out and play good. I wouldn't be scared like I was 2 years ago. Texas is a lot better now, but I want to see Texas come out, be up 14 zip, 10 zip after the first quarter or whatever it is, and force some turnovers. And then what I really want to see, and we'll talk about this on tomorrow's episode as well, I want to see sacks. It's time for the sacks to start to come in this game. And UTSA may try to keep it on the ground to play it safe. I think a lot of these lower tier teams are going to do that against Texas.
They don't want to hurt their quarterback. They don't want to,
And just so far, this Texas secondary does not look like last year's secondary. They've been able to get interceptions in both games, and say what you want about the level of competition when it comes to quarterback, but I don't think UTSA or ULM, even though it's General Booty, is not going to be bringing.
We're gonna have a lot of fun with that next week.
And the level of quarterback, yeah, we'll find out a little bit more, when they play the Carlson Becks of the world. But for now, I'm not really worried about anyone beating Texas through the air. And
there's not really a quarterback on the schedule aside from Carson Beck, maybe Jackson Arnold.
Yeah, I mean, I still think Jackson Arnold. I've seen some OU fans ask for him to be benched. That is an offensive line issue.
Yeah, it is, because they're down to like their third string.
I think the 4th string center.
Yeah. So staying on UTSA, I really like the fact that what you said about let's start converting that pressure into sacks. I think that has to start showing at some point, and it will. I'm with you. Like you said on yesterday's episode, I definitely believe that the sack or the pressure will turn into sacks. It's only a matter of time. I really want to start seeing just a complete dominating performance, no kind of hiccups, just almost a clean, perfect game. And I want it to be as though, like, yeah, if Texas State can blow UTSA out like they did last week, Texas's backups should be able to do that, because I think Texas's backups would beat Texas State. So there should be no issues. There should be no problems. It should get ugly. And I'm talking like in the 60s to single digits ugly. Like it really should be a dominant performance, as though Texas is playing like a rice.
It should be Colorado State, but worse. Maybe UTSA gets some points. Getting a shutout's tough in college. But I think this game should just be handled and essentially over by the second quarter. Quite frankly, I wouldn't mind seeing Arch play the whole second half.
I'd like to see Arch get in much sooner, and I'd also like to see a part of the game where Quinn shouldn't be playing in the third quarter. Like it should be that much of a blowout in the first half, where you're in the 30s, 40s to 0 at that point going into the third quarter, and it's like, yeah, Arch is getting the nod in the second half.
Because it was a little sloppy to start against Colorado State.
Yeah.
It was not sloppy to start against Michigan, other than some penalties, but Cam Williams, first road start, you don't completely excuse it, but at the same time, he played really well. He settled in after that. That was really the only sloppiness. And also, that again, that holding call was bogus. They scored a touchdown on that first drive.
Yeah.
So I don't think Texas started slow at all against Michigan. So I don't want to see them. They have shown that they can do that against an elite defense. So there's no excuse to start slow against UTSA.
I like that, because that's kind of where my takeaway was going to be. What I want to see this Texas team come out with the same intensity you came out against Michigan, against the UTSA. Come out with that same drive, that same energy against ULM. I don't care who you're playing at this point. Come out with that energy, dominate, and then, okay, let's get our backups in. Let's coast.
We talked about it in several episodes. Sark has said it over and over. The standard is the standard. That is what they say within the program. The standard was set last week.
Yeah.
The standard was set last week. Now they need to hold up to that standard. And if they do hold up to that standard, they are going to drop 60 points on UTSA.
And regardless of how unfair it might sound, that is now the expectation every single week from here on.
It's what you're going to need in the SEC. Say what you want, Texas getting a little lucky with their schedule. I don't care what A&M does this year. That's going to be a tough game on the road. I don't care what OU's record is. The Red River rivalry is the most fluky game on the planet and is going to be tough. And the Mississippi States of the world, the Kentuckys of the world, all those teams are going to give you their absolute best shot.
Absolutely, they will.
Going on the road to Arkansas. Arkansas may have lost Oklahoma State last week, but I think we all know that
they dominated. You go look at the stat sheet. Go look at the box score. You go see the team stats of what Arkansas did to Oklahoma State. You would think Oklahoma State would have gotten blown out in that game.
They put up 650 yards on a pretty good defense on the road.
And now I just saw a most updated playoff prediction. Oklahoma State winning the Big 12 and being the 4th seed in the playoffs following that game. And that's what Arkansas just dominated that team. So, again, you're right. That's not necessarily something that Texas can just waltz into Fayetteville and just think that they're going to dominate.
No, I may try to go to that game.
That'd be fun.
It's not a far drive for me in Kansas City, but I'm very excited. I think Sark's going to really try to make a statement in that game.
Think so too.
But I just going back to the point that even though this SEC schedule may not be as hard as some of the other, OU schedule, for instance, is just death row. It's going to take that type of performance week in, week out to try to stay undefeated or only drop one game throughout the season, especially with the OU and Georgia back to back. That is going to be a crucial stretch in this year. And the way that you get ready for those games is by dominating these games against UTSA and then against Louisiana Monroe and, quite frankly, against Mississippi State.
You're exactly right. Well, let's go ahead. Let's jump into some of the week 3 preview. Actually, tonight's game, Arizona State, Texas State, might be a little interesting. You mentioned that to me off air.
This is I think, a premier game. Texas State has been on the upward trajectory as a program. It's a 1.5 point line for Arizona State. And San Marcos, it's going to be rocking and rolling.
It is a home game. It is a home game. San Marcos is a crazy environment. I know the type of students that go to San Marcos. They will be rowdy. They will be tailgating. They will be ready for the game.
Biggest party schools in the country going against each other.
That's a great point. Wow. That tailgate is incredible. Yeah, I would actually. You want to go to San Marcos tomorrow? It sounds like a good time. So let's go ahead. If Texas State wins this game, and they continue the trajectory that they are they a dark horse for that 12 spot?
Yeah, I don't even think they're a dark horse. I think they're a contender for that spot already, and this is their chance to cement that.
Yeah.
Obviously Northern Illinois is the leader currently, but I think Texas State is a contender. I heard people talking about them as a contender before the season.
That'd be fun.
And it's fun, that program being good, and maybe Texas will schedule something with them soon. That could be a fun little series. UTSA was an up and coming program recently. They're rebuilding right now. I'm sure they will be back up. I have a lot of respect for Jeff Traylor, and we'll kind of get in that to tomorrow, but I'm very excited to see how that matchup plays out, and I'll be rooting for Texas State, of course.
Friday night, we've got Arizona at K-State, number 20 against Kansas State, number 14. That is also not a Big 12 game. Those are two Big 12 teams, not as a Big 12 game. Very strange. Now, Jake, there could be a dilemma at some point at the end of the season because of this.
Yeah, the reason it's not a Big 12 game is because this was scheduled beforehand, but just make it a Big 12 game. Because what's going to be ridiculous is if, let's say, Arizona beats K-State, and then at the end of the year, they're tied in the standings, but because of whatever the tiebreaker goes down to, K-State wins the tiebreaker.
Yeah, and gets into the Big 12 championship game over Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a playoff spot that was decided head-to-head, but because it wasn't a league game, I assume it's not going to count.
Yeah,
it's not a league
no,
game
it won't.
As far as the head-to-head.
And that's only the Big 12. Only the Big 12 can do that. Thank God Texas is out of that conference. But I don't think that that's been thought of ahead of time. Because you're right, the repercussion of that, and that happened last week as well with Utah and Baylor. Same thing could happen. Now, I don't think Baylor will get to a point to where they're contending for a Big 12 championship game. But just the idea of, wow, head-to-head was already decided. What about the tiebreaker at the end of the season? That may not come into play at all because it's not a conference game.
And Arizona and K-State are both teams that are absolutely contenders 100%. To win the Big 12. I was a little surprised at the line of this game, by the way. I think K-State -7's pretty disrespectful to Arizona.
Arizona struggled last week against Arizona State or Arizona A&M or
Northern Arizona,
whatever it was.
Like
yeah. They had a slow start.
Yeah, but I just think we've seen time and time again that not really matter. I like Arizona in this game. I don't think K-State's look particularly great in their first couple of games. So I mean, they almost lost it to Tulane. They didn't look dominant against UT Martin.
That's true.
I'm not only taking Arizona to cover in this game. I'm taking Arizona outright.
Nice. And is that your upset?
No.
Okay. We'll get to the upset then. Alabama, Wisconsin, just real quick thoughts, Jake. Over under at 50.5, Alabama 16-point favorites in Wisconsin. That's also where College Game Day is.
I want so badly to pick Wisconsin to cover. Just to cover. I don't think they can win this game. I know Alabama didn't look great last week, but I just don't think they have the quarterback yet. I think Wisconsin will be a program that's on the up soon, but I'm going to take Alabama to cover in this game, and I'll probably take the under as well.
I could see this one being a bit of an upset, and I might call this one LSU, South Carolina. South Carolina's 2-0. They had a big performance, huge blowout win over Kentucky a week ago. LSU has looked meh.
I disrespected South Carolina last week.
We did. We both did.
I apologize for that, South Carolina
I was not familiar with your game.
I was not familiar with your game. First College Game Day for them in a long time. I think LSU is going – to me, the big thing in this game is South Carolina's edge rush.
Is game day at?
Yes.
I thought it was Madison. I thought they were in Madison and Wisconsin.
No, they're in South Carolina.
Oh, okay.
I'm 100% sure.
Oh, okay. Because they had mentioned it last week during the Texas-Michigan game. They had mentioned that they were going to Madison, Wisconsin. So
they might have changed.
They probably changed it after.
But I'm going to take South Carolina in this game.
I think I am too.
I am not completely confident in that, but I'm going to take them outright in this game.
All right, let's go ahead, skip to a couple of other games going on around the area. Again, let's talk a little bit of the Boston College Missouri game.
Yeah, last time I checked that line, it was 16.5 for Missouri.
It's at 16.
It's at 16 now.
Yeah. That half point would make a big difference.
At first, I thought that line seemed crazy. I kind of dove into it a little bit more. I actually like Missouri in this game, and I like Missouri to cover. I think they are chomping at the bit to play a real football team because they just have not through the first couple of weeks. I think that offense is going to be rolling. Luther Burden's going to have a big game. I like Missouri, and I like him to cover.
All right, I'm going to quick plug. We don't even have to talk about this game. First upset for me this year. We're going to do upset picks. I just picked mine. Oregon State over Oregon. All right, Tulane, Oklahoma.
Here we go. This is my upset pick.
Okay, all right. I figured we were getting there.
OU is going to lose to this TU team that they're always talking about every year and that they hate so much.
Yeah.
And it's not even I actually have a lot of respect for the Tulane football program. I think they're a pretty good program. I mean, they've been consistently around or in the top 25 for a few years now. I think they're very ticked off about losing that K-State game that they quite frankly should have won. I think they're going to go into Norman, and I just haven't seen it from OU. They have not looked good. I know they won 51-3 against Temple. Temple is dreadful.
Yeah.
They might be the worst FBS team in the country.
Yeah.
And OU did not look good in that game, and they looked pitiful against Houston. I haven't seen a good performance from them, and it's going to take them putting on a much better performance to beat Tulane.
OU is 14-point favorites. That's actually not a huge spread considering they're playing
I think it dropped to 13.5 actually today.
Yeah, that's actually not all that surprising because, I mean, you're looking at a ranked game, Mizzou and Boston College having a larger spread than OU Tulane. Like, think about in college terms, 13.5 points isn't a ton to cover in college.
Especially for OU, who in previous years would probably be a 30 point favorite. Yeah. Even against a Tulane, because they would just bury teams like that. But I think a lot of people are very alert after watching that Temple game where their offensive line got beat up by Temple. And then that carrying over to Houston and looking even worse against another team that is terrible. I mean, OU's two opponents are 0-4 combined, and Temple and Houston are not going to combine for more than 5 wins this year.
That's insane. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode. Get your daily fix right here on All In Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. And remember, same time tomorrow. Hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.